I want to make sure that you start your new school year in the fall with a clear framework for planning and teaching for proficiency. So I created a free reflection and planning tool that will guide you as you create a classroom that prioritizes what students can do with language and not just what they know about it. In this episode, I will tell you all about what's in the guide and then point you to where you can get your free guide today. So let's jump in. Are you a language teacher looking for some reassurance that what you're doing in the classroom is on the right track? Or maybe you're looking for some ways to teach even more effectively. If you're one or the other or somewhere in between, you've landed in the right place. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with your host, me, Joshua Cabral. You're about to get tips, tools, and resources so that your students continue to rise in proficiency and communicate with confidence. Let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and thank you, as always, for taking the time out of your week to hang out with me and talk about language teaching here on the World Language Classroom Podcast. So much appreciate you being here with me. So on this episode, I want to share something with you. Share something with you that's free. And who doesn't like something that's free, right? So you heard about the guide that I put together in the intro. But before we get to the guide, let's just talk about why we even need something like this. So we clearly want our students to develop into confident communicators and not just language learners. So by focusing our classrooms on things like performance and proficiency and communication, and using language authentically, then our students are going to communicate in the language. It's really a simple concept. Focus on performance, focus on proficiency, get them communicating in authentic ways, and they will actually communicate. Now, proficiency is really what students can do with the language and not just what they know about it. Now, in our classrooms, we want to focus on performance because proficiency is out in the real world without teacher support. So what we're doing is we're focusing on performance in our classrooms. So we want our students to develop into confident communicators and not just language learners. So how do we do that? Well, in our classroom, we want to focus on performance, which will then lead to increased proficiency. And that means that our students can communicate in the target language in authentic ways. So it's really a simple concept. I know I say it's simple and it's not really all that simple, but when you put it in these terms, it sounds easy. So we want to focus on performance, which is what students can do with our scaffolded support as teachers. And through that performance, they're going to build proficiency. So when they're out in the real world and they're using their language, that's their proficiency level without our support as teachers. And they are truly authentically communicating. So we focus on performance in the classroom. It helps to build their proficiency so that they communicate authentically out in the real world. So now when we use the word proficiency, this is really about what students can do with the language and not just what they know about it. And that just what they know about it is what I often refer to as the legacy approach to teaching, where they know how to conjugate verbs. They know that it's a noun. They know that it's a verb. They know what the correct adjective form is. That's all well and good, and it's not detrimental to their proficiency, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will use it correctly and accurately in context when they are speaking or writing in an authentic real-world situation. But to help them get to there, we are going to focus on performance in our classroom, which is what students can do with our support as teachers. So to help with this, I created a guide to support your planning and teaching that focuses on performance in the classroom, which will eventually increase their target language proficiency when they're using the language in authentic real-world situations. So I'm going to walk you through what is in this teacher guide, but you can get your own copy either through the link in the show notes or by going to wlclassroom.com/teacher guide. So wlclassroom.com/teacher guide, or the link is also right in the show notes. So each section in the guide highlights essential components that support confidence and proficiency growth. So you'll also see actionable steps that you can take right away. So I'm going to tell you about the different sections that are in there and the questions that I pose. Now, in the actual guide, you're going to see the answers to all these questions, because if your response is yes, then you don't really need the suggestions. But if your response is no, that's not happening in my classroom, then I give you some suggestions to help make that happen in your classroom. So that's where it becomes a guide for your teaching. So the first section is about purposeful planning. So I ask you questions like, is your curriculum grounded in real-world communication and aligned to proficiency targets? Are your units organized around real-world themes and meaningful contexts? Are your lesson goals focused on what students can do with the language and not just what they know about it? And are your lessons and assessments designed backwards from clear performance and proficiency goals? So you read these questions about purposeful planning, and if you say no, or perhaps not, kind of, then I give you some really strategic, actionable things that you can do in your classroom so that you can get to the, yes, my units are organized around real-world themes and meaningful contexts. The next section is about comprehensible input and student output. And I ask you questions like, are students consistently hearing, reading, and using the target language in meaningful ways? Are you using the target language at least 90% of the time during instruction? Are students exposed to authentic input such as stories, music, videos, or conversations? And do students regularly produce language through speaking, writing, and interaction? So if you answer maybe, sort of, or no, I give you some really actionable things that you can do in your classroom right away so that you say, yes, I am using the target language at least 90% of the time during instruction. The next section is about meaningful tasks and relevant practice, with questions such as, is instruction connected to students' lives and communicative goals? Are grammar and vocabulary taught in context rather than in isolation? And do classroom tasks mirror real-world language use, not just exercises? So if you're thinking about these questions and you say, not really, or no, I give you some suggestions so that you get to the point where you say, yes, grammar and vocabulary are taught in context rather than in isolation. The next section looks at assessment and feedback. And I ask you, do your assessments reflect performance, proficiency, and communication? Are assessments tied to the 3 communication modes? Do students understand how they're being assessed and what growth looks like? Does your feedback encourage growth and risk-taking rather than perfection? So any of these questions, if you find yourself saying no or not really, I give you suggestions. So you get to the point where you say, yes, my feedback encourages growth and risk-taking rather than perfection. The next section is about professional reflection and collaboration, with questions such as, is there a shared culture of learning and improving among teachers and leaders in your school? Do teachers reflect regularly and set small instructional goals? Is collaboration supported through PLCs, coaching, or shared planning time? Or does professional learning focus on real classroom needs and student outcomes? So if you're saying, oh, not really, or no to any of these questions, you're going to have suggestions there. So you get to the point where you say, yes, there is a shared culture of learning and improvement among teachers and leaders. And the last section looks at common challenges in proficiency-based classrooms. And this comes down to the reality that we all face challenges in our classrooms. You're not alone, I'm not alone, we're not alone. But there are small shifts that can make a big impact. And this is a recap of a previous episode that I did on common challenges in a proficiency-based classroom. But you'll see all in one place here what to do when you have different proficiency levels in the classroom, large class sizes, student resistance to your CI approach, particularly if they've never been in a CI-type classroom before, those time constraints, and then traditional grading systems that you may be held to, and classroom management during interactive activities and what to do about that. So if you say, yes, I have this challenge in my classroom, you'll have some really strategic things that you can do. So you get to the place where you say, even though I have a large class size, this is a really productive, comprehensible, input-based classroom. And then the very last section of the guide helps you to look at your own personal next steps and your personal action plan. So it gives you an opportunity to look through the questions and note the ones that you said yes to. This is happening in my classroom, and celebrate that and feel really good about that. Share out with others what's working for you in that area. And then to focus on maybe 2 or 3 of the suggestions. In no way am I saying you should try to do all of this in your classroom right away when you go back in the fall. It's not possible. So it's about finding 1 or 2 that are a priority for you that you would like to focus on. So be sure to check out the show notes where you will see the link to download this free guide with all of the questions and suggestions for you, or you can just go directly to wlclassroom.com/teacher guide. And while you're in the show notes, you can also sign up for Talking Points, my weekly email newsletter with tips and resources for language teaching. There are also links to get in touch with me if you would like to work together, and we can either do that in person in your school or remotely. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the World Language Classroom podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Connect with me on X, aka Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WL Classroom. And for even more valuable resources, visit my website, wlclassroom.com, where you'll find over 300 blog posts about language teaching. So stay inspired, keep growing, and continue making a difference in your language classroom.